Morning. My name's Milan Radia. I work at Hardman, which is a boutique research firm. I'm going to talk about hot topics in technology. I've got the flames there just to signify that the market is quite warm. There's certainly some areas of real activity, but I think it is possible to burn pound notes as well if you're not careful. I'm not going to be talking about blockchain and Bitcoin, for example, today. What do we do? Well, we have a whole team of sector analysts who have a lot of experience writing across a range of sectors. I think many of our team here, they can talk to you about MiFID II and how that's destroying the landscape for traditional research. I've spent 25 years of my career working at various city firms, so Prudential Portfolio Managers, UBS, Jefferies, covering these stocks. And I can tell you now that that traditional model is starting to come under some serious pressure. And that's changing the way that companies have to commission research and how investors have to think about where that research is delivered and created. Some of the things we're going to talk about today, the Internet of Things, smart home, artificial intelligence, the cloud. I'm going to canter through these things because we've only got 20 minutes and I'd like to leave a few minutes for Q&A at the end if we can. So let's dive in. So what are we doing today? This is how we spend our time today. And these charts never cease to amaze me in terms of the sheer extent of what 1 minute brings in the world of internet. We're downloading hundreds of thousands of things. We're uploading billions of bytes of data in the form of photos to Instagram, videos to Facebook. And these are global trends. So you might think, oh, this is a developed market phenomenon. It's not. If you go to Africa, the fastest growth that WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger are seeing are in parts of Africa. Why? Because there's already a lot of smartphone enablement. We know from M-Pesa and other payment technologies that in Africa they've been making payments through their mobile phones for years. Now, given the disparate families and so on, user-created video is one of the fastest areas of growth anywhere in that continent, and that's going to be replicated in other parts of Asia. So there are some phenomenal trends at work in the way that we live, the way that we work, the way we communicate. We don't phone people, we use WhatsApp and so on and so forth. Everything's changing. The way we watch TV, Netflix, even on our skyboxes now, we're doing much more on demand rather than being beholden to what's on the TV schedule. But we're in the very early phases of all of these trends, and I think we're going to see healthcare, other aspects of our lives being absolutely transformed over the next few years. And I mean, I certainly look at my heart rate a number of times on my Apple Watch. I'm even doing ECGs now that I can, and someone is collecting that data. I'm sure they're going to tell me at some point what's wrong with me. But you know, this is just an early step in this kind of process. And enterprises are also subject to the same change. Lots of legacy architectures out there. Industry sectors are being absolutely transformed under pressure. Banks, challenger banks have changed the way that a traditional bank has to think. So branches are being shut down. If you walk into a branch, you might have a couple of counters, but it'll be lots of electronic tills and counters and phone lines to contact sort of central call centers. The central theme in that whole world is automation. It means more productivity, more efficiency, higher returns on investment, happier investors ultimately. So turning to the Internet of Things, Ericsson are a good source of information on this. You can see that the number of connected devices in the world is going up a lot. Over the next sort of 4 or 5 years, we're going to add 13 billion sort of connected devices. And interestingly, of that 11 billion are going to be what's called short-range IoT devices. So that's the sort of stuff you have in your home connected. And I'll show you a couple of examples of that in a moment. But the growth opportunity is massive. And that's a tangible growth rate that you can actually find investment themes around. So IoT, it's all about devices being connected, collecting, transmitting data. The Apple Watch is just one example of that. Smart home devices are a very good representation of that whole opportunity. And again, at the very early stages of that, AI is also adding some flavor to that. Alexa, you know, many people are going home and their 5-year-olds are saying, Alexa, can you turn the lights on? Or can you play this bit of music for me? That is becoming commonplace now in the average domestic environment. Again, we've just scratched the surface. So think about that internet minute. 10 years ago, the level of activity was a fraction of that. I think you can pretty be certain that in 10 years' time, we're going to be looking at many, many multiples of these figures in terms of take-up and utilization. So the European smart home market looks like this. Some pretty big players, some smaller players. It all comes down to the ability to execute in certain areas of that breadth of product range and how you can make it easy to use for the end customer. And one of the companies I just wanted to touch on was LightWave, because it's a UK-listed company. Not that many people know about it, but essentially it's been doing this for a decade. A new CEO arrived last year. They've shifted their distribution structure away from sort of exclusive agreements, and now they're everywhere. Yeah, they're in Apple stores across Europe, on the shelves in many cases, and certainly online, John Lewis, Currys, Amazon, and so on. And they're complementing that with a very nice online marketing strategy. There's a whole family called the Smart Family who will tell you about how their lives are being transformed by this type of technology. And it's paying dividends because their revenue growth is over 100% year on year as we look into the current year. So this is starting to pay dividends. And what did I do in terms of due diligence? I actually went to my local Apple store and I found a whole shelf of their products. So that was good validation. And there was a recent partnership with Resideo, which is a major player in the US smart home market cap of multiple billions, spin-off from Honeywell. So the Honeywell home brand now lives within Resideo. They've signed a pretty detailed partnership to work together with LightWave, which has got a market cap of millions, not billions. So quite an interesting set of themes to explore there. Artificial intelligence. It's really started as an effort to try and replicate how the human brain works and start to give computers that set of capabilities. Machine learning was where it all kind of really came together. Data science techniques, millions of data points of data. Let's try and teach the machine how to respond to these data points and react. That's now evolved, and over the last decade, you've seen a lot of emphasis on deep learning, where we're trying to create mathematical algorithms that replicate how the brain functions and responds. And so we're getting much better accuracy rates in terms of how machines are thinking. And lots of tests have shown that we're now starting to approach human levels of accuracy. Doesn't mean perfect. It just means when you look at a standardized curve, that they're starting to get to average levels in terms of speech recognition, in terms of the ability to actually type, robots working in factories. And so AI-based automation, I think, is going to be a major theme now as we start to look forward, because the technology is really catching up. And as I mentioned, we've got it in our homes already. AI is already a prevalent feature in domestic environments with Amazon, Echo, Google Assistant, and other similar technologies. Look at the enterprise market, though. Everyone thinks AI is already, starting to become prevalent. This Gartner survey is quite fascinating. Only 4% of CIOs have actually implemented it, yet 70% think that there are benefits to be reaped from exploiting this investment over time. So that's quite interesting. The journey hasn't really been commenced. And I would probably say the same thing for cloud, which I'll come back to in a moment. Very early stages of these market opportunities. So finding interesting ways to play that is certainly an opportunity. Chatbots are a nice example of artificial intelligence for the enterprise market. And conversational AI is the kind of broader term for that. But it's all about when you phone Vodafone or in AT&T in the US, you're typically now talking to a chatbot who will ask you, sometimes it can be pretty excruciating, and that's all about how good the technology actually is, but they'll eventually want to minimize the number of people who get through to a human person, because that's expensive to handle your query on a human basis. And IBM estimates that in 2 to 3 years from now, 85% of our service interactions over these sort of online or phone channels will be handled by automated customer service agents. So the traditional call centers will then be reserved for more complex queries. And advanced platforms are the ones that deliver here, the ones that are enterprise grade, scalable, have the right kind of data. Artificial Solutions is a really interesting company in this space. Came to market recently, based in Sweden on the Nasdaq First North Exchange. Their customers include AT&T, Vodafone, Volkswagen, big US fast food chains. They added 3 big customers, including an airline and a US government agency in the first quarter alone. Their patents are valued at 96 million euros. So when you go away and look at the market capitalization, because of perhaps the lack of understanding at this early stage in their life as a public company, you might see there's an opportunity there. And this is coming back to validation points. There was a nice piece of research from ETR Research who surveyed CIOs. So that's probably the acid test, the actual end buyers of these enterprise services. 700 of them, massive annual IT spend under their control. Many of them are in the Fortune 100. And they decided that Artificial Solutions was the best positioned in its own sector, conversational AI, and the third best overall across all of the different segments of emerging technologies. When I see something like that, that's a tick in the box in terms of validation of their ability to deliver the products that the CIOs, Chief Information Officers, actually want. Finally, cloud adoption. And one of the big themes in technology today is all about enterprises taking their applications away from their physical buildings. Quite often the server rooms in the basement, badly protected, could flood easily. And they're saying, how do I transform that IT architecture? And a big part of that decision making takes them to the cloud. So that's Amazon Web Services, that's Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud. And so that is happening at a rapid rate. So it's worth bearing in mind that the whole IT landscape is changing. And data centers are one of the investable vehicles that are very much benefiting from this trend. So the European data center company that you could invest in, but it's US quoted, is Interaction, which is a nice play on some of these themes. But we're very early, again, in this whole enterprise journey because it's complex. Taking a big enterprise resource planning application like SAP and migrating to the cloud is not done very easily. Huge amounts of data, process automation, customization that needs to be handled. So that is all part and parcel of this kind of adoption curve that's going on. So how do you assess investability? I think one of the interesting things about the landscape today is that there's a huge amount of startup activity, innovation. Private companies are generating a huge amount of this and they're getting snapped up as soon as the big companies sort of realize that they're missing out on something. So that's going to be an ongoing theme. And one of the things I sit on the voting panel of the National Technology Awards. In fact, there are dinners tonight where they hand out the awards. But what struck me as I looked through the hundreds of submissions for that is that there are a lot of UK companies that are delivering products, services around some of the themes we talked about, around some of the other similar themes that are benefiting. So how do you assess them? Well, I think technology validation, customers, patents, proofs of concept, reviews, if it's a consumer-facing platform, e.g. LightWave. How evolved are their routes to market? Systems integrators, resellers, direct sales. What is the traction they can actually point you to? Revenue models that generate recurring revenue are hugely preferable because you get visibility. The old perpetual license will sell you something year one and then we'll hope that you do more with us in year three or that we can win other customers. Creates volatility and it's an unpleasant attribute for a company in the technology sector. So recurring revenue is absolutely a critical attribute to look out for. And a roadmap. So where does this company go? It's not just for investors, it's also for customers. Customers will favor companies that have got that ability to scale with the business with a clear and well-articulated roadmap. How unique is the positioning? That tells you not only about how much room to grow, but also about the M&A possibilities around that business over time. And then lastly, the management team. What's their track record? What have they done before? And how much experience that's relevant do they bring to this? And that'll give you some pretty good clues about how to think about what they're going to achieve at this business. Thank you very much.